Hi, I'm Ned Kelly. I just got done reading chapter 3 of Handbook for the Spirit. Basically, the whole book, so far as I perceive it, is about developing our awareness of God, our oneness in God. Several points in this particular chapter discuss our separateness from God, or having the experience of being separate, feeling away, feeling separate from each other, individual people and beings on this planet, and separateness from God. And it talks about the various authors discuss why and how, if there needs to be, what is the remedy for that. Stephen Levine, one of the essayists, says, you cannot know God. You can only be God. You cannot know God. You can't think and define and scholarly describe to somebody else what God is. You can be God. You can experience God. You can have a developing and growing awareness of God. And I think one of the reasons why we feel separate is because in our day-to-day life we usually function in the knowing, in processing, in decision-making, just to survive in this human experience. And that's helpful to survive. And yet, as far as letting go and having that awareness and experience of being in that oneness, it's helpful to let go of trying to know and define and have that formula. If we just came up with the right formula instead of rules, dogma, then we could define what God is and we could teach it to the next generation as well. We can't know God. We can only be God. So I think that's one of those factors involved in that separateness, or that experience of separateness. Andrew Harvey, in his essay, says fundamentally there are three ways in which everyone can realize this direct relationship to the divine: prayer, meditation, and service. Prayer, meditation, and service. Well, prayer and meditation admittedly are almost the same thing, If prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening to God, and what we're ultimately developing is this awareness that we are God, talking and listening are the same exact thing. It is God having a conversation with God. So whatever you call it, meditation, prayer, spending time in the silence, being mindful, it ultimately, even if it's prayer beseeching, saying, God, please give me a new mini bike, ultimately that is developing and leading to that awareness of beingness, that awareness of God. And the third one he mentions is service. In oneness, if you and I are one, how could I not help? How could I not want to serve you? I'm serving myself. If I am trying to grab everything I can for myself at the expense of others, then that might be coming from a sense of separateness rather than oneness. So a good way to develop that experience of oneness and your awareness of God is through service, is through giving, is through sharing, whatever that is, your gifts, your time, your talent, all of the above. And the other way around. So not only is that a practice to develop your oneness, it's a good kind of indication perhaps when I find myself in a time of giving, of service, then I'm kind of remembering that I am connected. I am in that oneness. Andrew Harvey also writes in that same section, in that same essay, about our culture and how it is perhaps not conducive for this sense of oneness, that our culture spoon feeds everything to us. He talks about how the relationship with God requires the active and passionate participation of you yourself. You have to risk it. You have to abandon yourself to it. You have to leap into the fire. Nobody will do it for you. Nobody can do it for you. In a deep sense, we've all been made slaves of convenience by a culture that stresses ease and quick solutions. This has divorced us even more completely from our authentic self and from the rigors and risks of a real relationship with God. So as if we could go to the fast food restaurant and order up a number 3 special, we wish to have that spiritual development. Give me a number 3 with a side of the divine. It's that fast pace, that quick. There's no quick formula for it. It's only through that process of prayer, meditation, of service, of developing that as a practice to experience God. You know, one of the best symbols of separateness, I think, is from Dante's Inferno. One of the authors even mentions Dante in here, which I thought was neat, because I was thinking Dante and I was thinking hell in this idea of separateness, and then I think it was Stephen Levine also mentioned Dante. Well, so at the very bottom of the Inferno, of hell, the bottom layer is the devil. It's this huge monster of a devil, frozen in ice. Yes, ice, not fire, but ice is at the bottom of hell. Symbolically, that's farthest away from God, the light and the warmth of God. When you're farthest away from that, when you're in that feeling of separateness, that's darkness, that's coldness. Is the devil in this, frozen in this ice, barely able to move. In his mouth, he's perpetually chewing and gnawing on Judas, the betrayer of Jesus, and he has in his hands two famous people from history. I think Brutus was one of them. I forget who the other one was, but they people who betrayed their kinsmen or their leaders. So that idea of betraying, of turning your back on, I think that does go along with that coldness, that separateness, that feeling away from each other and away from God. If I deny my oneness, when I'm in that experience, and we all go through it from time to various degrees throughout our life. And for myself, at those moments when I was a betrayer, when I denied my true self, the Christ presence, the oneness, the Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it, when I turned my back on that, when I said, no, that's not me, I'm separate from, that's when I felt the coldest, the darkest, and away from that. Now Dante, interestingly enough, in the Divine Comedy, he also gives us the remedy. In my mind, this is what he does. And the Inferno is this awareness of that separateness. It's confessing time. It's saying, you know, I feel separate. This is the experience I've been going through. And then the purgatory is the purging, the releasing. If you use denials and affirmations, that's the denial. That's saying, I release that thought. This is the cross, this is the crucifixion story, the dying out, the letting go of any of those beliefs that I could be separate. And then in part 3 of the Divine Comedy is the paradisio, is the rising into heaven, into that kingdom of heaven consciousness, that oneness. And again, if you use denials and affirmations, that's the affirming, the I am, the joy, the love, the oneness of God. So I think it is fitting to take note and start with that experience of separateness. Don't beat yourself up over the head for it. Simply acknowledge it, become aware of it, and then release that you're stuck in it. Dissolve the idea that it has any power over you, and then affirm in your prayer, in your meditation, and in your service with each other, brothers and sisters, in this oneness. Affirm the God that we are. Namaste.